Right. I'm going to play along to a track, and hopefully David will be happy to notice that I'm ticking the box that I said I'd tick a couple of weeks ago. How do you unmute? Oh, for God's sake. I can't even unmute everybody now.
I think we have to unmute ourselves.
Oh, it's fucking Zoom. Shite. So you guess everything. Minor keys, basically. So it's difficult, actually, lads. I realised that I was sort of scrolling through my repertoire of Irish music, and one of the nightmares of not having CDs anymore is that you've forgotten all the fucking albums and where they are. You remember them when you find them, but you can't look at the... Anyway, the point being is that I went through the Alan Kelly and John Kelly album, which I personally think is fantastic for learning how to back. But there's not actually that many minor tunes on there. And it's actually, that's pretty consistent with a lot of trad music. And, you know, I was listening to a lot of the albums, and then there's not really straightforward ones. And there's actually there's so many of them. And it's just, they're kind of nestled in, and you often don't start a track in a minor key because it's quite a dark thing to do. Don't know. But anyway, the point being is that I found one on a Matt Malloy album, one of the famous albums he did, and it's quite fast. I can't do anything about that. It's trad music, but it is there. And I just, basically, I'll do it one more time for you, and I'll just sort of tell you sort of the focus as what I'm doing here. So rhythm-wise, it's very much back down to that sort of, you know... That's my formula for that, which is, you know, the shimmer. But I'm kind of doing that jig over reel style. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Yabbity 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 da. Hickory 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 dock. And I'm kind of keeping that as the formula. So from a really sort of basic point of view, you can really kind of just go, if you think of your scales like this, when you're in the major realms, think of those kind of arpeggios there, with you kind of, all you're doing is one finger and number 3 finger, so your 4th finger. So you got that, the index finger, and then you got your 4th finger doing the work, missing out everything where the middle finger would go. But when you're in a minor key, just a good rule of thumb, lads. Think of it all going down the scale. As soon as you go up, that kind of goes into the... That's a little bit too minor. It's dark minor. You don't often get that in trad music. So I'm just going down from here. And if we were doing it major, okay, makes this really quite a simple trick there. So if we go back to the rhythm, I'm going to just do this slowly so you can sort of play along. So that's just going to that very simple. You can either do the two together or the split. So you got the railroad on the D's of dad. It's a lot stronger, but I prefer this one. That's very strong, but it's very open. Whereas this one, it's just, for me, I love that chord. I think that's much nicer. Remember, your flick for the emphasis points, lads, the phrasing, not out of time, but you're flicking, your actual muscle movements may be out of time, but your strum is in time, but you're looking for dynamics on your playing and possibly a faster strum, but dead in time. So that flick there was faster, but not out of time. Big difference. See my hand flicks faster, but it's not out of time. That is so important that you take that on board. Same with my upstroke there, that emphasis on the flick there. It's a real flick, but not out of time. So if we just do that together as kind of like a bit of a progression. And again. I'm kind of doing a flick before I change the chord. Nice kind of give it a slightly different. Now I'm going to change chord on the flick. Just for something a bit different. And I change chord on my emphasis on the down there. So I'm choosing where to put my phrasing. That little push just at the end, it's on that flick on the up. So I'm constantly kind of thinking of this shimmer of a kind of very regular pattern. That's the underlying thing. And then I'm thinking about my swing on my jig over the reel. That's my bedrock. Don't worry about the doubles, the double down there, ignore that. So essentially, those are the chords that I'm choosing to do. So if I play the track one more time, I mean, it's going to be much simpler than all of that I've just shown you, but you'll just see where I'm going to just choose very simple phrasing on the tune and keep it as simple as possible. So here we go. I'm trying to make it a bit more interesting. So I was trying a third time round. I was really going for that kind of build, and I wanted to get a little bit of bit more bass runs going in there. You know, Patrick, you often bring up the sort of bass runs and where sort of to stick them and stuff. And it's one of those things that nice sort of bass progressions as you push up, kind of always remembering when you need to resolve back to one. But it's all about the energy build. And if the tune allows you to, you can kind of chug that bass a bit more. And it's sometimes nice to just drop between that to your 4, to your 5. Remember, lads, the 4 and the 5 in the minor world, they're the same. So that could be major or minor. That's just chugging in a kind of open progression there, but it sounds minor. We all think that's minor at the moment. I do, but it's actually 1, 4, 5 open. So there's no, we haven't put the third in there, but because we've got a minor tune going around in our heads, do you see what I mean? It fits. It's only when I put the third in that it'll feck it up if I put the major third in there. Now really, see what I mean? So actually, a lot of it, apart from this bit here, a lot of that there is minor, apart from that one there. But remember, a lot of Irish music, when it comes to minor tunes, it's almost not quite full-on Wagner minor, if you know what I mean. You know, it's full-on, it's not exactly Ride of the Valkyrie sort of stuff. But you could do this chord, which is your alternative, you know, when you've got your number 6 chord here, when you're playing in major, it's such a nice chord. But we can just shift that down. We've looked at that before. We just shift it down, the whole thing. That's really nice. So I'm going to play it one more time, and this time I'm going to instead of going the simple ones there, I'm going to do a little bit more of, see where I can stick this. Now, I don't know yet. I'm going to see where it happens. I'm just going to sort of feel the tune with it. So here we go again. That works. Been a bit naughty here, but it works. So hopefully what you spotted there, that I actually did a load of different shines, different chords, and it still worked. Now, the thing I did here is a simple trick, and it's just an energy build. So you have to have a lot of confidence to do this in the setting, and you have to really have your vibe about your playing and the feel just spot on to get away with it. And it is one of those things you need to get away with. And it does depend on the musicians that you're with, but I just held build of energy, and you can do that on a lot of chords. You can kind of, one more time, and I'll sort of speak through it, David, so that, as you mentioned a few weeks ago, sort of try and explain what's going through my head. Again, the beginning, lads, where that's a very good place to come in, and I come in a bit soft. So I'm holding this because I'm confident that it works with the tune, but I had to move to the 4 there. I'm not repeating the same trick twice. Now I'm going to try holding on the 4. Very Dennis Cahill. Now I'm going to go to the 5 for a release. So I've changed it now. Now I'm going to go back down to the 6. Just move the whole position up, 1 tone. So again, different options there, guys. But as you know, the other thing is you don't actually have to go on full minor with the 6. You can, that would work. You don't have to go down to this one. Minor world is, I find the minor world beautiful, that, but it works just as well. Last time, I'm gonna, instead of doing this chord, I'm gonna go to this note a little bit more. So one more time. It works. What doesn't work, that doesn't work. So if I'm going to start being sneaky, so there is potential to sort of, you know, be a bit jazz centric, if you will, and start hopping in chords that otherwise would normally be. But remember, when we talked about this chord here, the number 4 chord, I often said, don't put this in, because it just kind of Spanishifies it. Well, in my mind it does anyway, you know, I suddenly want to hear, and I, you know, love the music, but it doesn't quite feel right to me. Na, 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 na. And I don't really want that kind of dramatic chord in there, so I take away that, so it's an open chord, whether you've got the DA down or is it the D and the D down, it's up to you. But it actually feels, if I was going to put a 3rd in there, I'm going to be sneaky about it and put the, just as a bit of a sneaky thing to do. And again, it's confidence and awareness and vibe that you can get right to do that. But the one that's really important to know that you can change is this one here. Kind of all work in that scale in a weird way. That works. And I use that quite a lot in a minor progression. That is the little finger and then the index finger on the 2nd string on the 2nd fret. Sorry lads, just in case anyone's really confused and lost, we're on the 3rd fret here, capo. And that does work.
It takes you from a sort of a C chord or C over God knows what else to down to a kind of a not a B minor, but nearly. So it's like you're adding a C and then relative minor progression into what you're doing.
Yeah, kind of, but you can't do this relative minor. See what I mean? So this finger here,
right?
You can't have that. So if you were gonna, it's a nice chord, but it has to be that one, because if we go to the, just take it from a visual rule here, lads. If we take it from that visual rule, we know that that's in the minor territory, because that fret and that fret work when we're playing in major. This fret and this fret work when we're playing in a minor. Now, as mentioned, we've got this one down here. Only this one and this one that are the ones that actually really sort of make the exception to that rule, and they're the ones that really make it minor. But what I'm saying is that this one here it's on the A string, lads. The A of Dad and the A of Gad. Those two, it's a bit of a movable note that you could, or not movable note, that's the wrong way of putting it, but it's kind of an optional thing that you can do. So I'm actually dancing between these two on that blues progression quite a lot, and I'm getting away with it, and it works. And that's the thing to bear in mind when we're sort of playing along with this tune. So if you want to get your notes out, lads, I know you can come back to the recording on this, but if you want to take this down as just what it is now, it is Patsy Tooheys and the Maid Behind the Bar set off Matt Malloy. And the album looks like this. Okay, so, oh, that's nice. They've removed the 40-minute diddly-dum today, lads. It's very nice of them. Okay, so that's the album. Matt Malloy. I think it's just called Matt Malloy, but it's featuring Donal Lunny, which Bouzouki, funny enough. But
it'll almost surely be on Spotify if Niall, if you have the chance to throw it onto the Spotify list that you've made.
Sadly, I'm not on Spotify, lads. Otherwise, I'd love to be on that list. In fact, I possibly might be able to access it because I use Amazon. But can you just throw that link up to that list on the chat, Niall, so that I can access it? That'd be great. Because if I can add to it for you, lads, that'd be great. So yeah, let's chat about that, lads. So if you want to unmute yourselves, and we'll just talk about that and just make sure we're all on the same page. So yeah, what's your thoughts, Mick? You go first because you've got some good sort of pointers on how we're.
Well, one of the reasons I said a few weeks ago is that I sometimes get confused in the minors, is because there are different kinds of minors, and you keep playing the different kinds, and because you're so used to the tunes, you go backwards and forwards. You know, you find the different ones sort of with your ear.
That's true.
But when I'm in a session and have to guess where they are, that's where it gets confusing. So the two different minors, you say, if you're in D minor, if it's the relative minor, then the chords, it harmonizes one way, and if it's the other minor, modal, which is usually Dorian, then it's going to harmonize slightly differently. So if it's the let's say that's D minor, and if it's the relative minor, then it's the relative minor of F.
Yeah.
Okay, so your chords are going to be chords in F, which is going to have that B flat.
Yeah.
The flat in the F key is why it has those chords.
Yeah.
But if it's D Dorian, then it's in the scale of C, and it's going to have it won't have quite the same chords. You're going between the both of them, and sometimes the tunes do, which is where it gets confusing for an English ear like mine. You know, because it goes between the two different kind of scales and keys.
Sean,
But you know, you know the tunes backwards, and I don't, so I can't follow them. Are you with me?
I follow you completely. Right, there's a couple of things to cover there, Mick. That's great. Mick, your theory of knowledge is better than mine, but I do know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm going to sort of, if you don't mind, just sort of explain it a bit more in a visual way for the guitar.
Yeah.
Just so that because I know what you're talking about, but I know that some of you guys won't know what Mick's on about there. But it's a very, very good point. So, the first thing I want to cover, which is what Mick's point about that I know what to do and where to go with a tune. And there's a very simple answer for that. And it's, I know the tunes. And there is, the answer is, there is no getting around that. There's no simple trick to get around that. Once you know the tune, even if you don't even know how to play it picking wise or diddle it, you just have, you know which way it's gonna go. Then it's a bit like knowing a song. You don't know the lyrics, but as soon as the song's playing and you can hear it, you can kind of sing along with it, even if you kind of go, no, 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 power of love, no, 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 whatever. So it's a bad choice of song, I know. But the point being is that you will, the more you listen to music, the more you understand it, and the more fucking pray to God that we get out into sessions again soon. But the more we get exposure to that and we're put on the spot and we learn it, that'll all come. So don't worry about that side of things, Mick, because that will come. But the important thing that we can look at, which is what you mentioned, is the relative minor compared to the sort of, to what I would call, Mick, a more solid minor. Let's take it from the lesson that we looked at last week, and it's to do with capo movement and placement and voicing and what we're going to choose to do with that capo. Okay, and this is very much visual, lads, so keep your eyes open on this, because eyes and ears on this, and we're going to just learn it visually. So here we are in I'm going to actually change it so that we're actually going to go down to, ignore the track we were on. I'm going to take it now to D. Now, Mick mentioned D minor. There are a few tunes that are in D minor, but they're usually sort of weird and wonderful tunes by, people like Paddy Fahey and stuff like that. Most tunes that are in D, as we discussed many moons ago, D major, G major, E minor, A minor. And then you've got the add-ons like B minor, etc., etc. But there are some tunes in D minor. And we're going to look at that. So just from a visual point of view, let's go with the trick. Okay. I'm playing in E minor there. I'm just going to mute you guys so you can play along without disrupting it. So do feel free to play along with this just to get familiar with it. Okay, nice and solid minor. Mick, we're gonna sort of try and think a bit less theory. I know it's a bit of a weird thing to say, but think dark minor, sinister minor, Darth Vader minor. Now, we want to change that voicing because it's not as dark a minor as we thought it was. So we're now going to play up here on the 3rd fret, okay? So this is now the root F, okay? Now this is where Mick's pointed out that the relative minor of F is D minor, okay? So I'm going to look for my number 6 chord because the 6 is the relative minor. There it is. So I'm going to keep that as my root, and I'm going to use all the chords that I know that are the F chords, minus these ones, lads. So it's just the block chords. So but I'm going to focus my root to be the relative minor. I'll do it slowly so you get the idea. Okay, it's the same. One of them sounds dark, one of them sort of sounds more poppy. Okay. Different voicings, different feels. Okay. So I can't give you a dodge on that, but there are certain tunes, as Mick said, that need a different voicing, because sometimes they resolve quite a lot on, let's say we're in D minor and it's the relative minor of F. A lot of these tunes suddenly resolve back into F. It's like they are actually still in F, but they are operating and starting off on the relative minor. And they're quite complex, those tunes, in a way, and you have to know them, because you have to know to start on the minor chord. And actually that's what I've been struggling with, is to find, and there's many of them, but it's just actually finding them that start off on the track, which are sort of, they stick in the minor the whole way, and you can kind of sort of have them. So say you had something up in A minor, there's quite a few of them, but it's just that there is quite a lot that would use the rule that they would then go to C, because C is the sort of the dominant major, if you will. Wrong expression, apologies to the music buffs here, but A minor is the relative minor of C. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, fucking hell, what the hell do you know, Jesus, how am I meant to know all this shite? I won't lie to you, it's just something that, going back to the puzzle pieces, guys, it's just pieces you need to sort of put on your board, as it were, and look at it for ages, keep learning it, and you'll slowly put those puzzle pieces together in your mind, okay? You'll start knowing what is the relative minor of certain keys. And a lot of this can be learnt visually with the capo, okay? And there's a good trick for this. Don't forget that when you've got your relative minor, so there's my number 6 chord. I'm down an F now. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look where your fingers are. Look where they are. And I'm looking down and I'm going, there's the double dot. And I go, fuck, well now where would that double dot be without the capo? What does that double dot mean without the capo? And I go, well, of course it's fucking D, isn't it? D. But take the capo off, it's basically high D. There it is. Hold the chord down, put the capo back onto 3. Take the capo off, still D. So I'll do the same thing again, put the capo back on, the F. I know I'm kind of flogging the horse here, lads, but I'm just doing it for the... Okay, so I'm using that sort of as a visual guide here to kind of gauge it. It's not dissimilar to what we were looking at last week, which was the A minor bit. Look where you're holding. Look where you're holding it. So it's just okay. So that's put the capo where you're pretty much barring it, and then it's on the 7th, which is. My fingers go back down. I'm just holding this one down, but I could hold down the one that I'm doing here. I just prefer it this way around. I'm just sort of doing it that way instead of doing it up there, which is where my root finger would go. So going back to the relative minor. So let's just, for shits and giggles, let's just work through this. And this is going to be going into what the last thing Mick said about the B minor thing. Okay, so let's find out where B minor is. Okay, so we've got with Irish music, you know, our sort of famous minors, which are A and E. There's also B minor. Okay, and B minor. So B minor is the relative minor of D. So let's just go through it all together at the moment. Capo's on 0, as it were, on the nut. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's our relative minor. Remember, lads, it's a relative minor of a major progression. So we're not doing. Have to be in a major key to find that relative minor. There's our number 6. Right, so that's our B minor. So let's say there was a tune in B minor. There's many of them. One which is quite famous is Jenny's Chickens. Terrible singing in one. I'm gonna think to myself, just it's not really strong enough for me. It's a bit too fucking, you know, Taylor Swift. Look where my fingers are. It's okay. There we go. So I'm gonna capo up to that fret, doing it all visually, and I'm gonna just treat that now as my B minor. So I'm gonna play in a minor progression here. The tune doesn't quite feel right. I've changed my mind. Doesn't quite feel right, so I'm going to put the capo back up to there. Now, here's what we're going to do. Same exercise that we did last week. Lads, what I'd like you to do is to play, we'll slow it down. I'd like you to play your B minor down here, so number 6, and we're just going to do it nice and steady. I want you to go down from the 6 to the 5 and back. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just backwards and forwards. Keep doing that. So I'm up on the 9th fret, and you should still be with the capo on 0. Now, everyone move their capo up to 9, to where your fingers were for the root, for what you were doing for your root there. Get practicing with your nice fast capo changes. Jan's so fast he's had a quick drink of tea waiting for you all. Okay, so capo's up at 9. Right, so let's do that together. All I'm doing, nice. Remember, when you're kind of playing like this, lads, because you're now with the root being your kind of your B minor, your not B minor necessarily, but B is kind of central now. It's all B's, pretty much. It's, you know, B, B, B. You're turning that one into whatever it feckin' is. I can't do the theory here. But basically, just need one finger down. Keep doing that. Da, 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 and here we go. you've got the ability to sort of move around there. And just touching one more time on what Mick's point was, is that sometimes these tunes resolve in their sort of, I think the term is relative major. You know, please correct me if I'm wrong, lads. As you well know, theory is not my forte. So there might be. So it definitely feels like it's a minor key in that A part. A part. Now the B part. So do you see, sometimes it warrants that. I can't get the same kind of gravitas on that change. This is partly because of my limitations on dadgad, but it still makes a good point of why we use the capo. Doesn't quite have the same drop for me, you know, so I'm going to the D. And get, you know, it just doesn't have the same sort of feeling of dropping right down. So, point being is that, go up to that one there. B part. Other way round. B part. So I'm doing it visually, lads, a lot of the time, and just choosing choosing where I go on it. Questions?
I feel like so much of this comes back to your original point about knowledge of the tune, because it's something that I wouldn't ever have the confidence to do that, like playing with voicings, if it were, unless it were a tune that I'd heard 100 times and would, you know, was able to kind of to actually play on the guitar. And I might then think, and again, it would depend who's in the session. If I'm, you know, if there's like 3 other guitars there and I'm going to screw it all up for them by messing with something that's already well established.
My take on that, David, is that as much as it's great and it's fun to sort of mess around with the voicings, if you want the fail-safe, the absolute fail-safe, just resort back to whatever key it's in, put the capo there accordingly. That is the easiest way to do it. So if somebody says something, and now Mick, this is where it's slightly difficult, because if you get a tune like, just trying to think, you know, I think Jenny's Chickens goes to C. Yeah, it does. So it goes to C in the C part. So is it C or it goes? Yeah, no, it was one of the fucking keys anyway. But it basically resolves to the relative major of where you're at in the minor.
Which is F sharp. Sorry, it depends. The version of Jenny's Chickens I was just looking at before this morning. It says it can. Some people play it in B minor, and some people play it in B Dorian. So they play it both modal and not modal.
They've got no consideration for us steady beginners here, lads. It's terrible.
Exactly. Which is a bit of a bugger. And when you're in a session and and you're trying to play along and you play it one way and they're playing it the other way, they sort of all the accordion players and the fiddlers, they all frown at you. And
well, let's just, for shits and giggles, lads, let's actually see if we can pull up Jenny's Chickens. I'm going to pull up now. Every time you put in a tune name in Spotify or something, it always comes up with a rock band version. It's a bloody nightmare.
Well, just on that point, Mick, while Taz looking, I mean, I was at a session at the ICC where Mick O'Connor was there. You know, the banjo player. I don't know if you've heard.
I don't know.
I mean, he comes to the ICC session and I mean, he knows every bloody tune under the sun. Like, he's ridiculous. He's just a library of every Irish tune. And it was at one point Michael was playing on the fiddle, and he started playing this tune from somewhere in Northern Ireland that shifts between a major and minor mid-tune. And I was completely foxed by what the hell was going on with this tune. And Mick O'Connor stopped playing. And I mean, like, I'm betting Tad can back me up on this. Mick knows every single, like, he's ridiculously knowledgeable about tunes, but he stopped playing. And at the end, when Michael had finished on the fiddle, Mick, was asking questions about it, and it kind of dawned on me, this is Mick O'Connor stopping mid-tune because he didn't know the tune well enough. Like, if he has to stop playing, then what the hell are the rest of us doing playing along, Anyway.
Point. If you don't know the tune, don't worry about it. Certainly in a session, when you're at home working through it, then it's play it until you've fucked it up so many times you can only get it right. Here's Jenny's Chickens, lads. I'm just going to play through it. Mute yourselves if you want to and play along as well. And it's in B minor, so I've put the capo up, up onto the ninth fret, which is where my fingers would be. My middle finger would be up there if I was playing in the relative minor position for D. So I know it's in the right spot. And we're just going to play along with it. And we're going to get to that part where it changes. I'm going to see if there's a nice little trick we can all figure out together, so that if we do come to that part, we know what we can do. If you get my absolute dribble that I said there. Let's go. Wrong tune. It's not Jenny's Chickens. I apologize. Complete amateur here. Gravel walks. Anthony McGraw would kill me for this. I bloody hate Irish music sometimes. It's going to be rough. Yeah. So this is Gravel Walks, lads, okay? It's A minor, 7th fret. They can't even play it right. It's dreadful. It's meant to go to feckin' C. I hate feckin' shite. Anyway, it's meant to go to the C there, which would be this chord here. Don't worry about that. We'll kind of keep more focusing on that. I think there's too much sort of covered today in some respects. So don't worry about that, because I've got to kind of, I know what I'm doing with it, lads, but I need to sort of formalize how to sort of teach it better. So apologies on that front. But it does annoy me when you get bands doing this shite. They play it badly and then they change the tune because they can't play it. But so yeah, we've got to finish up now. But is everyone sort of happy enough with the kind of sort of the rough idea of where we're going with minor tunes and what it's doing? Niall, you happy? David? So basically, lads, have a listen to the Matt Malloy album. It's a good one to sort of add on to and play along with it. Speed, you know, that's just something you guys just got to keep on working at. Just go with the kind of idea, stick to just getting that capo where it's meant to be for the root of the tune. And the root, if ever in doubt, just kind of Google what that tune would usually be in, okay? Because a lot of the times, if they've changed it by a semitone or whatever, because they're playing different instruments or something, it's often near that capo position anyway, okay? So if something says it's in D online usually, and they're playing it in a funny key, it usually means it's just one capo position up. That's a good way of doing it. But you'll find it. It's quite, you just use your ears with it. Any doubts, send a link to the track on the chat thing and just make sure you at me on the chat and just ask me what it is and I'll figure it out and just put it in the chat, okay?
Good, lads. Nice one, Ted.
Good.
No worries, lads. God, fuck it up. Exhaust me. My brain's melting.
Thanks, Dad. Thank you.